What if the act of having children is in fact the most selfish decision a person can make? This may sound like a strange and contentious assertion, but it forms the very foundation of a philosophy known as antinatalism. To begin to understand this, let us engage in a thought experiment. Imagine you are in possession of a magical key. This key holds the power to bring a new individual into existence, a brand new person who will experience all of life's splendor and all of its suffering. But there is a condition. The life you bring into being comes with no assurances. It might be a life filled with profound joy and wonder, or it could be one marked by unbearable pain and despair. The person you create has absolutely no say in whether they wish to exist. The decision rests entirely with you. Would you turn the key? This question is at the very heart of antinatalism, a philosophy that puts forth an argument against the creation of new life. One of its most notable proponents, David Benatar, presents a thought-provoking line of reasoning in his book, Better Never to Have Been. He introduces the concept of an asymmetry in existence. If an individual is never born, they do not experience pain, which is a positive state. They also do not experience happiness, but since they do not exist, they are not deprived of it. On the other hand, if an individual is born, they will inevitably experience suffering, even if they also encounter moments of joy. Benatar contends that the avoidance of harm carries more weight than the potential benefits of pleasure. In his view, the act of creating life is fundamentally unjust because it imposes suffering on a being who had no choice in the matter. But antinatalism is not just concerned with philosophical puzzles. It is also deeply rooted in the harsh realities of the world we inhabit. Consider the countless forms of suffering that are present: poverty, illness, war, and the collapse of our environment. Even in the most privileged of lives, there is still heartbreak, anxiety, and the inescapable fear of our own mortality. Every new life that is created is another being thrust into this unpredictable and often cruel theater of existence. Some antinatalists would argue that in a world where suffering is so pervasive, to bring a new person into it is an act of willful ignorance or of profound selfishness. This philosophy also intersects with ethical questions regarding our responsibility to others. The philosopher Julio Cabrera, another influential voice in the antinatalist movement, takes a moral approach. He argues that the act of procreation violates the fundamental principles of ethical behavior. According to Cabrera, to create a new life is to disregard the consent of the person who is being born. It imposes risks and burdens upon them without their agreement, which makes the act of procreation a morally questionable one. Cabrera goes even further, suggesting that to bring a child into the world is not an act of love, but rather an act of power, a decision that is made unilaterally by the parent. Beyond the scope of individual suffering, antinatalism also addresses the collective impact of human existence. Environmental thinkers, such as Les Knight, the founder of the voluntary human extinction movement, argued that to cease human reproduction could be a compassionate choice, not just for humans, but for the planet itself. Knight's perspective is rooted in the undeniable fact that human activity has caused immense harm to the Earth, from deforestation to climate change. The ecological cost of our humanity is staggering. Antinatalists like Knight see a world without humans not as a tragedy, but as a return to a state of balance, a world where nature can thrive without the destructive presence of our species. But what about the joys of life? The laughter of our children, the warmth of our love, the thrill of our discovery? Do these not make our existence worthwhile? Antinatalists would counter that these joys are fleeting and that they are often outweighed by the inescapable pain that life can bring. For every moment of happiness there is the shadow of loss, the weight of uncertainty, and the inevitability of suffering. Even those who can find meaning in their lives must still confront the harsh truth that their existence will one day come to an end, often in a state of pain or of fear. To the antinatalist, the beauty of life does not erase its inherent cruelty. Critics of antinatalism will often accuse it of being too pessimistic, even nihilistic. But many antinatalists would disagree. They would argue that their philosophy is not about hating life or about despairing over our existence. Instead, it is about a sense of compassion. It is about recognizing the immense burden that life can be, and about choosing not to impose it on another being. In this sense, antinatalism is not a rejection of our humanity, but it is a profound act of empathy. Let us return to that magical key. Would you use it, knowing all of the risks? Would you invite someone into a world where suffering is a certainty, even if happiness is also a possibility? Or would you choose to leave the key untouched, to spare them the pain and the uncertainty of existence? Antinatalism does not demand an answer. It only asks us to consider the question. And in doing so, it can challenge one of the most fundamental of our human assumptions, that to create a new life is always a good thing. Ephilism. Life is a mistake. Not just human life, but all of life. The predator that is hunting its prey, the insect that is devoured by a larger beast, the endless cycle of birth, of suffering, and of death. Ephilism, a radical philosophy, does not just question our human existence. It can question the very fabric of life itself. It can ask us to consider an unsettling idea. What if the kindest, most ethical act is not to sustain life, but to end it? Imagine a factory that has been running for billions of years. It can churn out living beings endlessly. Each one of them is programmed to fight for its own survival, to experience its own suffering, and to inevitably die. This factory is not guided by any intelligence or by any purpose. It will run blindly. Its only goal is the replication of its own DNA. This is the process of evolution, the engine of life. Ethicists would argue that this machine is fundamentally broken, and what is worse, it is cruel. Life, they would claim, is a mindless system that can perpetuate our suffering for no higher reason. To understand this, let us look at nature. Picture a lion that is chasing a zebra. To survive, the lion must kill and eat the zebra. The zebra, which is desperate to live, will flee in a state of terror. But neither of these animals has chosen this game. The lion will hunt out of its own hunger, and the zebra will run out of its own fear. The suffering of the one is the survival of the other. Nature's so-called balance is, at its core, a bloodbath. Ethicists would see this as not just a tragedy, but as evidence that life itself is inherently flawed. But ethicism will not stop at the natural world. It will apply its critique to our human life as well. Think about your own daily existence. Even in the best of our circumstances, we are burdened by the inevitabilities of our aging, our illness, and our death. Our joys are fleeting, and our struggles are unending. For every moment of happiness, there are countless moments of frustration, of loss, and of despair. And this is not just true for us as humans. Every sentient being, from the smallest of insects to the largest of mammals, is caught in the same trap. The ethicist's argument is simple, yet it is profound. Evolution, the process that has brought our life into existence, does not care about the well-being of the creatures that it will create. Its only purpose is to ensure our survival and our reproduction no matter what the cost. In this sense, life is not a miracle or a gift. It is a relentless cycle of our need, our pain, and our eventual death. Ethicists would believe that to continue this cycle is not just pointless, but it is ethically wrong. Now imagine that you are holding a switch. If you were to flip it, all of the life in the universe would painlessly cease to exist. There would be no more suffering, no more fear, no more endless struggle. Would you do it? This thought experiment can capture the essence of ethicism. It is not a philosophy that is born of a hatred for life, but it is one of a compassion for all of the living beings that are trapped in its cycle. Ethicists would argue that our true kindness lies in us ending our suffering altogether, even if that will mean that we have to extinguish life itself. Critics of ethicism will often label it as being extreme or nihilistic. But ethicists will counter that their perspective is rooted in a sense of logic and of empathy. They will ask, if you would not willingly subject someone to an endless amount of pain and of hardship, then why would you allow the continuation of a system that can guarantee our suffering for countless of beings? For the ethicist, the solution is clear: to stop the factory, to end the machine, to bring life's cruel experiment to a close. This is a perspective that can shock, it can provoke, and it can challenge the very foundations of how we will view our existence. Ethicism will not provide any easy answers or any comforting truths. Instead, it can force us to confront life's harshest of realities and to ask ourselves an impossible question: is our existence worth the cost? Negative utilitarianism. Imagine a world where the ultimate moral goal is not to maximize our happiness, but it is to minimize our suffering. This is the foundation of negative utilitarianism, a striking and controversial ethical framework. Unlike our traditional utilitarianism, which will focus on us increasing the overall amount of our happiness, negative utilitarianism will zero in on our suffering as the central moral issue, by arguing that the reduction or the elimination of our pain should take precedence over our pursuit of our pleasure. The roots of negative utilitarianism will lie in the recognition that our suffering is uniquely powerful. While our happiness can enhance our life, our suffering will often impose a much deeper and a much more urgent moral demand. A moment of pleasure might be fleeting, but our pain, whether it is physical or it is emotional, can dominate a person's existence. The philosopher Karl Popper, who was one of the early proponents of this view, had argued that the avoidance of our misery and our suffering should take a priority over us increasing our happiness, because to alleviate our pain will directly improve the quality of our life for those who are suffering. Negative utilitarianism can challenge us to think critically about the value that we will place on our happiness versus the importance of us alleviating our pain. In many situations, to focus on us reducing our suffering can seem straightforward and intuitive. To provide some food and some shelter to those who are in need, to offer some medical care to the sick, or to address our mental health crises are clear examples of our actions that will align with this framework. These interventions will directly alleviate our suffering and will improve our well-being. But negative utilitarianism will extend beyond our individual cases, and it will ask us to think on a broader, even an existential scale. One of the more controversial of the aspects of negative utilitarianism is the implication that if our suffering will outweigh our happiness in the world, then some drastic actions might be morally justified to prevent any further suffering. For instance, some interpretations will suggest that if life itself will inevitably bring us our suffering, then the moral thing to do might be to prevent our future lives from coming into our existence. This idea can align with our anti-natalist philosophies, which will argue against our procreation on the grounds that this will prevent our potential suffering. Such arguments can force us to confront some uncomfortable questions about the nature of our existence and the ethics of us creating our life in a world where our pain is unavoidable. Critics of negative utilitarianism will often highlight its potential for some extreme conclusions. They will argue that an obsessive focus on us eliminating our suffering could lead to some moral decisions that will overlook the value of our happiness, our joy, and our fulfillment. For example, if one will take the logic of negative utilitarianism to its extreme, this might justify some actions that will eliminate all of our sentient life to prevent our future suffering, a scenario that can raise some serious ethical and practical concerns. While most of our negative utilitarians will reject such drastic interpretations, the possibility can reveal the tension that is inherent in the philosophy. Another challenge for negative utilitarianism will lie in the complexity of us measuring our suffering. Our pain is subjective, and it will vary greatly among our individuals and our contexts. What one person will find to be unbearable, another might endure with a relative sense of ease. This variability can complicate our efforts to apply our negative utilitarianism consistently, especially on a societal level. How can we weigh the suffering of our different individuals or our groups? How can we balance our immediate pain against the potential for our long-term well-being? Despite these challenges, negative utilitarianism can offer some valuable insights into our ethical decision-making. This can push us to prioritize the reduction of our suffering in our situations where our resources are limited and our difficult choices must be made. In our global health, for instance, this framework can guide our policies that will focus on us treating the most severe of our illnesses or us alleviating the most pressing of our hardships. By centering our suffering, negative utilitarianism can ensure that the most urgent of our needs are addressed first, by providing a clear moral imperative to help those who are in the greatest of our distress. Negative utilitarianism can also invite us to rethink our relationship with our suffering on a personal level. This can challenge the cultural narratives that will glorify our suffering as a path to our growth or our achievement, by instead emphasizing the moral importance of our compassion and our care. By us recognizing the weight of our suffering, we can develop a greater sense of our empathy and of our responsibility toward others, by striving to create a world where our unnecessary pain is minimized. Ultimately, negative utilitarianism is not about us denying the value of our happiness, but it is about us recognizing the profound moral urgency of our suffering. This can call us to confront the darker aspects of our existence with a sense of honesty and of resolve, by reminding us that even our small acts of our kindness and of our care can make a significant difference. While the philosophy may raise some difficult questions and it may invite some criticism, it can also highlight a truth that will resonate deeply. To alleviate our suffering is a fundamental and a deeply human goal, one that will transcend our cultural and our philosophical divides. This can ask us not to abandon our pursuit of our happiness, but to ensure that in that pursuit we will not lose our sight of those who are suffering the most, the voluntary human extinction movement. Picture a world that is without any humans. There would be no pollution, no deforestation, no species that are driven to an extinction by our human activity. This is the vision of the voluntary human extinction movement, a provocative and a deeply controversial ideology that can propose a simple but a radical solution to our humanity's environmental impact. that we as humans should voluntarily stop our reproducing and should allow our species to fade into an extinction for the benefit of the planet and of all of our other forms of life. The voluntary human extinction movement is not about a hatred of our humanity or about us advocating for any harm. At its core, it is rooted in a compassion for the planet, for our future generations, and for the countless of our species whose existence is threatened by our human activity. Its founder, Les Knight, has articulated the movement's philosophy as being one of a voluntary action. He has argued that our humanity's dominance over the earth has caused an unparalleled amount of harm, and that the most ethical of our responses is for us to step aside, by allowing the natural world to heal and to thrive without us. The movement can ask us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our humanity's impact. As a species, we have reshaped our ecosystems, we have altered our climate, and we have driven countless of our species to an extinction. Every year, vast tracts of our forests are cleared for our agriculture. Our oceans are polluted with our plastic, and our atmosphere is filled with our greenhouse gases. The voluntary human extinction movement can suggest that these issues are not just the byproducts of our mismanagement or our inefficiency, but they are inherent to the existence of a species that is as dominant and as resource-intensive as our humanity. Supporters of the movement will argue that even the most sustainable of our human practices will come at a cost to our other life forms. While our efforts to reduce our footprint through our renewable energy, our conservation, and our sustainable agriculture are vital, they will contend that these measures are insufficient to address the deeper issue: our humanity's sheer scale and our consumption. For them, a voluntary form of extinction is not a statement of a despair, but it is an act of an altruism, a way to prioritize the needs of the planet over the perpetuation of a single species. Critics of the voluntary human extinction movement will raise several objections. One of the most common is that it will dismiss our humanity's capacity for a positive change. We as humans, after all, are not only destructive, but we are also creative, and we are compassionate. We have developed our technologies that can restore our damaged ecosystems. We have discovered our ways to mitigate our climate change, and we have advocated for the rights of our other species. Our critics will argue that instead of us disappearing, our humanity should focus on us becoming better stewards of the earth, by us finding our ways to coexist harmoniously with our other life forms. Another critique is the philosophical question of whether an extinction is inherently better for the planet. Without us as humans, the natural world would undoubtedly recover, but the cycle of our life would still involve our suffering. Our predation, our disease, and our competition are fundamental aspects of our ecosystems. The absence of us as humans might alleviate certain pressures, but it would not eliminate our pain and our struggle from the natural world. The movement can also spark our ethical questions about how our humanity will value itself. Is it possible to promote a voluntary form of extinction without us diminishing the inherent worth of our human life? The supporters of the movement will believe that it is, by them emphasizing that their philosophy is not about a misanthropy or a self-hatred, but it is about us recognizing our humanity's unique position of a responsibility. By us choosing not to reproduce, they will argue, we will acknowledge the power that we will hold over the planet, and we will make a conscious decision to reduce our harm. The voluntary human extinction movement can force us to think deeply about the nature of our progress and of our place in the world. This can challenge the assumption that our growth, whether it is economic, it is technological, or it is population-based, is inherently good. Instead, this can ask whether our true progress might lie in our restraint, in us stepping back to allow our other forms of life to flourish. This perspective can shift the focus from our human-centric narratives of our achievement to a broader view of the planet as our shared home. While the movement's ultimate goal may seem to be extreme or unrealistic, its underlying message can resonate with many who are concerned about the state of our environment. This can highlight the urgency of us addressing our humanity's impact, and this can spark some important conversations about our sustainability, our ethics, and the future of our life on our Earth. Whether or not one will agree with the idea of a voluntary form of extinction, the movement can serve as a stark reminder of the consequences of our unchecked human activity and of the moral responsibility that will come with us being the dominant species. The voluntary human extinction movement will not seek to impose its philosophy on others. Instead, this can invite a reflection on the long-term implications of our choices as our individuals and as a species. In doing so, this can challenge us to confront not only our environmental crisis, but also our values and our assumptions that will shape how we will live. The idea may be unsettling, but its purpose is to provoke our thought by us encouraging us to imagine a world where our humanity's legacy is one of a compassion, not of a destruction. Whether our humanity will choose to adapt, to change, or to fade away, The questions that are raised by the voluntary human extinction movement will remain relevant as we will now navigate the complex relationship between our progress and our preservation. The repugnant conclusion. What if a world that is filled with billions of people who are living their lives that are barely worth living is considered to be morally better than a smaller world, where everyone will experience a true form of happiness? This is the unsettling paradox that is known as the repugnant conclusion, a concept that was introduced by the philosopher Derek Parfit in his book, Reasons and Persons. This can challenge our deepest of our intuitions about what will make a world to be morally good. And this can force us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the way that we will think about our happiness, our population, and our ethics. The repugnant conclusion will emerge from a specific line of our reasoning in our utilitarian population ethics, which will focus on us maximizing our total amount of our happiness. Imagine a society with a small population of people who will all live their exceptionally good lives. Now, you can consider to add more people to that society, each with a life that is less fulfilling but is still worth living. As the population will grow, the average quality of our life will decrease, but the total amount of our happiness will increase because more people are experiencing their positive lives. If this logic is carried to its extreme, we will end up with a world where billions of people will live their lives of a minimal amount of a happiness, and yet, this world is considered to be morally better because the total amount of our happiness will outweigh the lower quality of our individual lives. This conclusion is deeply counterintuitive. This can seem to be absurd to suggest that a world where everyone is barely surviving could be better than one that is filled with our deeply meaningful and our fulfilling lives. Yet, under a strict utilitarian framework that will prioritize our total amount of our happiness, this is the outcome. The repugnant conclusion can force us to question whether our moral instincts will align with our philosophical principles. One of the reasons that the repugnant conclusion will feel so troubling is that this will reduce our lives to our numbers. By it focusing on the total sum of our happiness, this will treat our people as our interchangeable units of a value, rather than as our unique individuals with our rich, complex experiences. This abstraction can ignore the depth and the diversity of our human life, by it raising our questions about whether our happiness can truly be measured in such a simplistic way. Can the joy of a deeply fulfilling life be equated to the shallow contentment of many lives that are barely worth living? Philosophers have offered their various responses to the repugnant conclusion. Some will argue that the problem will lie with our utilitarianism itself. By them focusing solely on us maximizing our happiness, our utilitarianism will fail to account for our other values, such as our fairness, our dignity, or the importance of our individual flourishing. These critics will suggest that we will need a more nuanced ethical framework that will balance the quantity of our happiness with its quality. Others, like Parfit himself, have explored their alternative approaches to our population ethics. One of our proposals is the average utility principle, which will prioritize the average level of our happiness in a society, rather than the total amount. Under this principle, a smaller population with a higher average amount of a happiness would be considered to be better than a larger population with a lower average amount of a happiness. While this approach will avoid the repugnant conclusion, this can introduce its own set of our problems. For example, this might justify some actions that will reduce the number of our people in a society to artificially raise the average amount of our happiness, even if to do so will cause some harm. Another response to the repugnant conclusion is for us to question whether to add our new people to the world will have any moral value at all. Some of our philosophers will argue that our morality should focus on us improving the lives of our existing individuals, rather than us creating our new ones. This perspective can challenge the assumption that to bring more people into our existence will automatically add a value to the world. This can suggest that what will matter is not how many of our people are happy, but how well those who already will exist are able to live. The repugnant conclusion can also have its implications for our real-world decisions about our population and our resources. For example, in our discussions about our global development, our policymakers will often face their trade-offs between us improving the quality of our life for a smaller number of our people and us providing our basic needs for a larger population. The logic of the repugnant conclusion could be used to justify us prioritizing our sheer numbers, even if this will result in a widespread form of a mediocrity. This can raise our ethical questions about how we will balance the well-being of our current and our future generations. Parfit's work on the repugnant conclusion has influenced a wide range of our philosophical debates, from the ethics of our procreation to the moral responsibilities of our governments and our international organizations. This can challenge us to think critically about the values that we will prioritize and the assumptions that will underlie our moral reasoning. Is our happiness an objective measure of a good life, or is this too simplistic to capture the complexities of our human experience? How can we weigh the needs of our individuals against the needs of our collective? And what responsibilities do we have to those who do not yet exist? At its core, the repugnant conclusion is not just a paradox, but it is a mirror that will reflect the inconsistencies in our moral thinking. This can force us to confront the tension between our intuitive judgments and the implications of our ethical theories. By us grappling with this paradox, we can gain a deeper understanding of the challenges and the limitations of our moral philosophy, and we are reminded that our pursuit of a better world will often raise more questions than it will answers. The problem of suffering. Why does our suffering exist? If we will live in a world that is capable of us producing our beauty, our joy, and our love, then why is this also filled with our pain, our loss, and our cruelty? This question, which is known as the problem of suffering, has haunted our humanity for our centuries. This can challenge our understanding of our existence, our morality, and even the nature of our universe itself. At its core, the problem of suffering is not just about why our suffering will occur, but it is about what this will mean and how we should respond to it. Our suffering can take many forms, from the physical pain of an injury to the emotional anguish of a heartbreak or a loss. This is an undeniable part of our human condition. It is woven into the fabric of our existence. But what will make our suffering to be so perplexing is its universality. No one is exempt from it, whether they are rich or they are poor, they are powerful or they are powerless. Every sentient being will experience our suffering in some form. This shared reality can raise some profound questions. Is our suffering necessary? Is this random? Or is there a deeper purpose that is behind it? Philosophers and our thinkers have approached the problem of suffering in our different ways. For those who will believe in a power, our suffering can pose a theological challenge. If God is all-powerful and He is all-loving, then why will He allow our suffering to exist? This question, which is often referred to as the problem of evil, has led to our centuries of a debate. Some will argue that our suffering is a test of our faith or it is a tool for our spiritual growth. Others will suggest that this is a consequence of our human free will, a necessary byproduct of our ability to choose. Yet these answers will often feel to be incomplete. They might explain some of our instances of our suffering, but they will fall short when they are faced with the sheer scale of our pain in the world, our natural disasters, our disease, and our tragedies that will seem to strike without any reason. Our secular perspectives on our suffering will often focus on its biological and its evolutionary roots. Our pain, for instance, can serve an important function in us alerting our organisms to a danger. Without the ability to feel our pain, a person might not withdraw their hand from a fire, or they might not recognize the symptoms of an illness. Our emotional suffering, too, has its roots in our survival. Our fear can keep us safe from our threats, while our grief can help us to process our loss and to move forward. From this perspective, our suffering is not a cosmic punishment or a moral failing, but it is a necessary part of our life's design. Yet, to understand the purpose of our suffering will not make this any easier to endure. This will still leave us with our questioning of why our life must be built on such a fragile foundation. Our existentialist philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche and Jean-Paul Sartre have viewed our suffering as an inevitable part of our life, one that can challenge us to find our meaning in an indifferent universe. Nietzsche has famously said, "To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering." For him, our suffering was not something to be avoided, but it was something to be embraced and to be overcome, a crucible through which we can forge our strength and our purpose. Sartre, on the other hand, has seen our suffering as a consequence of our human freedom. Our ability to make our choices, to hope and to dream, will inevitably expose us to our disappointment and our despair. In this view, our suffering is inseparable from our human experience. This is the price that we will pay for the richness of our life. Another approach to the problem of suffering can come from our Buddhist philosophy, which will place our suffering at the center of its teachings. The Buddha has identified our suffering, or our dukkha, as the first of our four noble truths. According to our Buddhism, our suffering will arise from our desire and our attachment, our cravings for our pleasure, our permanence, and our control. These desires are in a conflict with the impermanent and the ever-changing nature of our reality, which can lead to our frustration and our pain. The Buddhist path can offer a way for us to reduce our suffering through our mindfulness, our ethical living, and our cultivation of our wisdom. While this will not eliminate all of our pain, this can provide us with our tools for us understanding and for us managing it, by us offering a path to our inner peace. Our modern psychology can also shed some light on the problem of suffering, by it exploring how our minds will interpret and will amplify our pain. Our research can show that much of our suffering will come not from the events themselves, but it will come from the stories that we will tell ourselves about those events. For example, to lose a job is undeniably difficult, but the suffering is often compounded by our thoughts like, "I'm a failure," or "I'll never succeed." Our cognitive behavioral therapy and our mindfulness practices can aim to break these patterns, by them helping our individuals to reframe their experiences and to reduce the emotional toll of their suffering. In our recent years, the problem of suffering has taken on our new dimensions with the rise of our artificial intelligence and our transhumanism. Some of our thinkers will argue that our suffering could one day be eliminated through our technology, whether this is by us re-engineering the human brain or by us creating our digital environments that are free of any pain. While this vision can raise our ethical and our philosophical questions, this can also challenge the assumption that our suffering is an inevitable part of our life. If we could eliminate our suffering, then should we? Or does our suffering serve a deeper purpose that we would lose in the process? Ultimately, the problem of suffering is not just an intellectual puzzle, it is a deeply personal question. Each of us will confront our suffering in our own lives by us grappling with its meaning and its impact. Some will find their solace in their faith or their philosophy. Others will find this in the support of their loved ones or in their pursuit of their justice. What can unite us is the shared experience of us wrestling with our pain, our search for our meaning in our hardship, and our hope for something that is better. Our suffering is a paradox. This is both universal and deeply individual, both necessary and unbearable. This can reveal the fragility of our life, but this can also reveal its resilience. While we may never fully solve the problem of suffering, the ways that we will confront it can shape who we are and how we will live. Perhaps the greatest of our lessons of our suffering is its ability to connect us, to remind us of our shared humanity, and to inspire our compassion, our courage, and our relentless pursuit of our understanding. Quietism. What if the best way to solve the problems of our life is for us to stop trying to solve them altogether? This is the provocative idea that is at the heart of Quietism, a philosophy that can encourage us to let go of our struggle for our answers and to accept our life as this is. Quietism is not about a resignation or a defeat. It is about us stepping back from the endless noise of our human ambition and us finding our peace in our simplicity and our stillness. To understand our quietism, you can imagine a person who is standing in a river, who is fighting against the current. They will expend all of their energy. They will be struggling to move forward, only to stay in the same place or to be swept backward. Our quietism will suggest that instead of us resisting the flow of the river, we should surrender to it by us allowing ourselves to be carried along. This will not mean that we are giving up. This will mean that we are recognizing the futility of our certain struggles, and that we are choosing a path of a harmony instead. The origins of quietism can be traced to our various philosophical and our spiritual traditions. In our Western philosophy, this is often associated with our figures like Pyrrho, the ancient Greek philosopher who had founded our skepticism. Pyrrho had believed that a certainty about our life's big questions is impossible, and that to strive for such a certainty will only lead to our anxiety and our frustration. His solution was for us to embrace a state of a suspension, where one will refrain from us making our definitive judgments, and will instead approach our life with our equanimity and our openness. For Pyrrho, this state of a detachment was the key to us achieving our inner peace. In our early modern Europe, our quietism took on a spiritual dimension with the work of our thinkers, like Miguel de Molinos, a Spanish priest who had advocated for a contemplative life that was focused on a surrender to the divine. Molinos had argued that the soul will find a true sense of peace, not through an effort or an action, but through a complete sense of a stillness and of a trust in God. This version of our quietism has emphasized the futility of our human striving in the face of a divine will, and this has called for a radical acceptance of our life's circumstances. Our quietism is not limited to our Western traditions. In many ways, this will resonate with our Eastern philosophies, such as our Taoism and our Zen Buddhism. The Taoist concept of wu wei, or an effortless action, will align closely with the quietist idea of a non-striving. Similarly, our Zen teachings will often emphasize the importance of us letting go of our attachment and of us embracing the present moment as this is. While these traditions have their distinct cultural and their historical contexts, they will share a common thread: the belief that our peace will come not from a control or an achievement, but from a surrender and an acceptance. One of the central challenges of quietism is its apparent passivity. Our critics will argue that this can be an excuse for an inaction or a way to avoid a responsibility. If we will simply accept our life as this is, then are we not turning a blind eye to our suffering and our injustice? Our quietists would counter that their philosophy is not about an indifference, but it is about a perspective. They will suggest that much of our suffering will come not from the world itself, but it will come from our attempts to impose our will on it. By us stepping back, we can see things more clearly, and we can act with a sense of wisdom and of compassion, rather than us being driven by an ego or a desperation. In the realm of our philosophy, Ludwig Wittgenstein's later work will reflect the quietist approach. Wittgenstein has argued that many of our philosophical problems will arise from our misuse of our language, and that once we will understand this, the problems will dissolve on their own. He has famously written, "Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent." For Wittgenstein, the role of our philosophy was not to provide our solutions, but it was to show the limits of our understanding and to help us to find our peace within those limits. Our quietism can also have its implications for how we will approach our personal and our societal challenges. In a world that is obsessed with our productivity, our progress, and our self-improvement, our quietism can offer a countercultural perspective. This can invite us to question whether our relentless pursuit of more success, more knowledge, more control, is truly making us to be any happier, or whether this is simply creating more stress and more dissatisfaction. By us stepping back from the constant cycle of our striving, we may discover a deeper sense of a contentment and of a clarity. Despite its emphasis on our stillness and our acceptance, our quietism is not a one-size-fits-all philosophy. This will require a careful reflection and a balance. For some, this may be a way to navigate the existential uncertainties of our life. For others, this may serve as a reminder for us to slow down and to focus on what will truly matter. In either case, our quietism can challenge us to rethink our relationship with our action and our inaction, with our control and our surrender. Ultimately, our quietism is a philosophy of a simplicity. This will not promise any easy answers or any quick fixes. Instead, this can offer a profound shift in our perspective, a way for us to find our peace not by us changing the world, but by us changing how we will engage with it. In a noisy and a chaotic world, our quietism can invite us to embrace our silence, our stillness, and the quiet power of our letting go. This can remind us that sometimes the most profound of our truths are found not in us striving for more, but in us learning to be content with less. Existential nihilism, our life has no inherent meaning. The universe will not care about us, and everything that we will strive for, our success, our love, our knowledge, will eventually dissolve into a state of nothingness. This is the stark reality that is at the core of our existential nihilism, a philosophy that can strip away our comforting illusions and can ask us to face our existence as this truly is. For many, this realization can feel like we are staring into an abyss, where our purpose and our value can crumble under the weight of an indifference. Our existential nihilism has gained its prominence through the works of our 19th century thinkers like Friedrich Nietzsche, Søren Kierkegaard, and Fyodor Dostoevsky. Nietzsche, in particular, has seen the collapse of our traditional religious and our moral structures as a profound turning point for our humanity. With the death of God, our society has lost the unifying framework that has given our life a sense of a coherence and of a purpose for our centuries. Without a divine plan or a higher authority, Nietzsche has argued, our humanity was left to navigate an empty universe that was devoid of an ultimate meaning or a direction. This absence of an inherent meaning will not just apply to our grand questions about our existence. This can permeate the minutiae of our life, the work that we will do, the relationships that we will form, the goals that we will chase. None of these will have an intrinsic value beyond what we will assign to them. To the existential nihilist, this is not a matter of a pessimism or of a despair. This is a reflection of our reality. The universe will operate according to its own indifferent laws, and any meaning that we will find in our life is purely a human construction. Jean-Paul Sartre, an existentialist philosopher who is often associated with our nihilistic ideas, has offered a unique perspective on this void. He has argued that the lack of an inherent meaning in our life is not a problem to be solved, but it is a condition to be accepted. Sartre has believed that we as human beings are condemned to be free, which means that in the absence of a predetermined purpose, we will have the ultimate responsibility to create our own values and our own meaning. This freedom, while it is exhilarating, is also deeply unsettling. This can place the burden of us defining our lives squarely on our shoulders with no external guide to follow. For many, our existential nihilism can evoke a sense of a despair. If our life has no objective meaning, then why should we bother with anything at all? This question has haunted our humanity for our centuries, by it giving a rise to what is often called our existential crisis, a profound confrontation with the emptiness of our existence. But not all who will grapple with our nihilism will succumb to a despair. Some will find a strange sense of a liberation in them acknowledging our life's lack of an inherent purpose. By them rejecting our imposed meanings, they will feel free to live authentically, without the weight of our societal expectations or our need to conform to our arbitrary standards. This freedom, however, will come with its own challenges. Without a universal framework, how can we determine what is good or what is bad, what is worthwhile or what is wasteful? Our nihilism will not provide any clear answers. This will not tell us how to live or what to value. Instead, this can force us to confront our own capacity for our meaning-making. For some, this can lead to a deeper appreciation of our life's fleeting moments. A sunset, a shared laugh, a quiet walk, precisely because they are temporary and they are unbound by a cosmic significance. Critics of our existential nihilism will often accuse this of being overly bleak, even destructive. They will argue that a worldview that is devoid of any meaning can lead to an apathy, a selfishness, or a moral chaos. Yet many of our philosophers and our artists have used our nihilism as a starting point for a profound sense of a creativity and of an insight. Fyodor Dostoevsky's novel, The Brothers Karamazov, has explored the moral implications of a world that is without a god, by it asking whether our humanity can maintain a morality without a divine authority. Albert Camus, while he was not strictly a nihilist, has engaged with our similar themes in his concept of the absurd, the tension between our desire for a meaning and the universe's indifference. Camus has famously asked whether our life is worth living in the face of this absurdity. His answer was not for us to abandon our life, but it was for us to embrace its contradictions. In his works like The Myth of Sisyphus, he has argued that we must imagine Sisyphus, who was condemned to endlessly roll a boulder up a hill, as being happy. The act of us living, of us continuing despite the lack of an ultimate meaning, can become an act of a rebellion against the void. Our existential nihilism will not offer any solutions or any solace. This will not promise a brighter future or a hidden truth that is waiting to be discovered. Instead, this can strip away our illusions, by it challenging us to confront the stark reality of our existence and to decide what to do with it. For some, this confrontation is paralyzing. For others, this is a call for them to create, to act, and to live as fully as it is possible in the face of our life's impermanence. In the end, our existential nihilism will leave us with a paradox. By it denying an inherent meaning, this can force us to recognize the immense power that we will have to shape our own lives. The absence of a cosmic purpose will not negate the value of our existence. This can shift the focus to the here and the now, to the choices that we will make, and the relationships that we will form. This is both a burden and a gift, a reminder that while the universe may be indifferent, our lives are ours to define. The meaning of suffering. Our suffering is inevitable. This will touch every life in every corner of the world, by it leaving no one untouched. But why does this exist? Is this merely a cruel accident of our life? Or does this serve a deeper purpose? The question of the meaning of our suffering has haunted our humanity for our millennia, by it inspiring some of our most profound philosophies, our religions, and our works of art. At its core, our suffering can raise our questions about our existence itself. Why must our living beings endure our pain, our loss, and our despair? For many, our suffering can seem to undermine the very idea of a just or a meaningful universe. And yet, some will argue that our suffering is not just an unfortunate byproduct of our existence, but it is a force that can shape us. It can challenge us. And paradoxically, it can give our life a sense of a depth and of a meaning. One of the most influential of our perspectives on our suffering can come from the ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus, who has seen our pain as an unavoidable part of our human experience. He has argued that to understand the nature of our suffering could help us to manage it. For Epicurus, much of our suffering will come from our fear of our death, our fear of our pain, our fear of the unknown. By us confronting these fears head-on and by us recognizing their limits, we can reduce the hold that they will have over us. This is not to say that we will eliminate our suffering entirely, but we will learn to navigate this with a greater sense of clarity. Our religious traditions can also provide some powerful interpretations of our suffering. In our Christianity, our suffering is often seen as a test of our faith or as a path to our redemption. The story of Job, for example, has explored the endurance of a man who will lose everything, yet he will continue to trust in God. Through his trials, Job's suffering can become a means of him deepening his relationship with the divine, even if the reasons for his pain will remain to be incomprehensible. This perspective will not necessarily explain our suffering, but this can reframe this as something that can transform and can elevate the human spirit. In our Buddhism, our suffering is placed at the center of its teachings. The first of our noble truths will state that our life is marked by our suffering, or our dukkha, which is caused by our desire and our attachment. This suffering is not seen as a punishment, but it is seen as a natural consequence of us craving a permanence in an impermanent world. The Buddha's path to our enlightenment can offer a way for us to transcend our suffering, not by us avoiding it, but by us understanding its roots, and by us learning to let go. This approach will view our suffering as a teacher, by it guiding us toward an insight and a liberation. For our existentialist philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche, our suffering is an essential part of our growth and of our self-discovery. Nietzsche has famously declared, "That which does not kill us will make us to be stronger." He has believed that our suffering was not to be avoided, but it was to be embraced as a source of a strength and of a creativity. Our life's greatest of our challenges, he has argued, can force us to confront our limitations and to push beyond them, by us transforming our pain into our power. To Nietzsche, our suffering was not just a condition to be endured, but it was a force that could fuel our human greatness. But not everyone will agree that our suffering has any meaning. For many of our nihilists, our suffering is simply a fact of our life. It is random, it is meaningless, and it is indifferent. This has no deeper purpose, no cosmic justification. This perspective can be both freeing and unsettling. On the one hand, this can absolve us of the need to find any meaning in our pain. On the other, this can leave us with the daunting task of us facing our suffering without the comfort of our larger narratives. Our nihilism can challenge us to create our own meaning in a universe that will offer none. Our modern psychology can offer yet another perspective, by it focusing on how we as humans will process and will respond to our suffering. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and a psychiatrist, has written extensively about the meaning of our suffering in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. By him drawing on his experiences in our concentration camps, Frankl has argued that while we cannot always control the suffering that we will endure, we can choose how we will respond to it. For Frankl, the ability to find a meaning, even in the darkest of our circumstances, is what will define our humanity. He has seen our suffering as an opportunity for us to rise above our circumstances and to affirm the value of our life. Our science, too, can shed some light on the nature of our suffering, particularly on its role in our evolution. Our pain can serve as a survival mechanism, by it warning us of a danger and by it helping us to avoid a harm. Our emotional suffering, such as our grief or our loneliness, can strengthen our social bonds and can promote our cooperation, which are essential for the survival of our social species. While these explanations will not offer a moral or a philosophical meaning, they can reveal our suffering as an integral part of our life's design, by it shaping the way that we will interact with the world and with each other. In our modern world, where our suffering will often feel to be overwhelming, our wars, our pandemics, our environmental crises, it is easy for us to see this as an insurmountable burden. Yet some will argue that our suffering can inspire our acts of a compassion and of a solidarity. In our moments of a collective hardship, our people will often come together to support one another, by them finding a strength and a meaning in our shared humanity. This will not erase the pain, but this will transform this into something that will connect and that will uplift. Our suffering can force us to ask our difficult questions. This can challenge our assumptions, this can test our resilience, and this can compel us to confront the fragility of our life. Whether we will find a meaning in it or not, our suffering will remain as one of the most profound and of the universal aspects of our existence. This is a mirror that will reflect our vulnerability, and this is a crucible in which our character is forged. Ultimately, the meaning of our suffering is deeply personal. For some, this is a source of a spiritual growth. For others, this is a reminder of our life's harsh indifference. And for many, this is simply an undeniable fact of our existence that must be faced and that must be endured. What can unite all of these perspectives is the recognition that our suffering, though it is painful, is an integral part of us being alive. In us understanding it, we can come closer to us understanding ourselves and the complex, the fragile, and the extraordinary experience of our life. The absurd. Our life will demand a meaning, but the universe will refuse to provide one. This is the heart of the absurd, a concept that was explored by the French philosopher Albert Camus. This can describe the fundamental conflict between our human need to find a purpose and the universe's cold indifference. The absurd is not a problem to be solved or a puzzle to be unraveled. This is a condition of our existence that we must learn to live with. Camus has believed that by us confronting the absurd directly, we could find a unique form of a freedom and of a joy. The absurd will arise from our unrelenting search for our answers. As we as humans, we will crave our explanations for why we will exist, for why we will suffer, and for what this all will mean. We will turn to our religion, our philosophy, our science, and our art to satisfy this hunger. But no matter how hard that we will look, the universe will remain to be silent. This will offer no ultimate answers, no grand purpose, and no comforting design. This silence can feel like a betrayal, as though the universe is withholding something that we are entitled to. Yet Camus has argued that this tension between our need for a meaning and the universe's indifference is not a failure of our existence. This is simply the way that our things are. The absurd is not just a theoretical idea. This is something that we will encounter in our everyday life. You can imagine that you are working tirelessly toward a goal, only to realize that this will not bring the satisfaction that you have expected. Or you can consider the repetition of our daily routines. Our waking up, our eating, our working, our sleeping, and our doing this all over again. These moments can expose the gap between our expectations and our reality, between the meaning that we will seek and the emptiness that we will often find. The absurd will reveal itself in these moments, not as a dramatic revelation, but as an unsettling reminder of our life's contradictions. For Camus, the absurd is not something to be escaped or to be overcome. This is a reality to be confronted head-on. Many of our people, when they are faced with the absurd, will attempt to resolve this through what Camus has called a philosophical suicide. This will occur when someone will abandon their quest for a meaning by them embracing a prepackaged answer, such as a religious faith or an ideological dogma. By them doing so, they will surrender their freedom, and they will reject the very tension that can make our life to be interesting. Camus has rejected this approach, by him insisting that the absurd must not be denied or must not be ignored. The absurd can also raise the question of whether our life is worth living. If there is no ultimate purpose, then why should we bother with our existence at all? Camus has called this to be the only serious philosophical question. His response was not one of a resignation or of a despair, but it was one of a defiance. He has argued that the absence of a meaning will not diminish the value of our life. Instead, this can give us the freedom to create our own meaning. By us accepting the absurd, we can live authentically. By us embracing the fleeting beauty and the chaos of our life, without us pretending that this must serve a higher purpose. Camus has used the myth of Sisyphus to illustrate his philosophy of the absurd. In our Greek mythology, Sisyphus is condemned to roll a boulder up a hill for an eternity, only for this to roll back down each time that he will near the top. This endless repetition could easily be seen as a metaphor for a futility and a despair. But Camus has reimagined Sisyphus as a figure of a rebellion and of a strength. He has argued that Sisyphus's task is no different from our own. We, too, will face our struggles that will seem to be pointless in a universe that is without an inherent meaning. Yet by him embracing his fate, and by him continuing to push the boulder, Sisyphus can assert his freedom and can defy the absurd. Camus has concluded his essay by him declaring, "One must imagine Sisyphus to be happy." This vision of a happiness is not about a denial or a false hope. This is about us finding a joy in the act of us living itself, even when our life will offer no guarantees. The absurd can remind us that our lives are ours to shape. Without a cosmic plan for us to follow, we are free to pursue what will bring us our fulfillment, whether that is our love, our creativity, or the simple pleasure of us being alive. In this sense, the absurd is not a curse, but this is an opportunity for us to live fully and honestly. Camus' philosophy of the absurd can also challenge our traditional ideas of our success and our failure. In a meaningless universe, our external measures of our achievement will lose their significance. What will matter is not whether we will accomplish our great things or we will leave a lasting legacy, but this is whether we will engage with our life authentically and courageously. This perspective can liberate us from the pressure for us to conform to our societal expectations or for us to chase our goals that will not truly resonate with us. The absurd is not an easy philosophy for us to embrace. This will require us to let go of our comforting illusions and to face the world as this is. But in us doing so, this can offer a profound form of a freedom. This can teach us to stop our searching for our answers that will not exist, and to instead focus on the experience of our living. The absurd can remind us that our life's meaning is not something that we will find. This is something that we will create. In the end, the absurd is both a challenge and a gift. This can ask us to confront the contradictions of our existence without us flinching, for us to live with our uncertainty and for us to still find our joy. Camus has believed that this acceptance of the absurd was the ultimate act of a rebellion, a refusal to be defeated by our life's lack of a meaning. By us embracing the absurd, we can reclaim our freedom, and we can discover a happiness that is uniquely our own. Our life, for all of its strangeness and its struggle, can become an adventure that is worth living. Life is a cosmic accident. Our life was not planned. This was not designed. This was not inevitable. This is the result of a cosmic accident, an extraordinary chain of our events in an indifferent universe that has just happened to align in the right way. From the formation of our first atoms to the emergence of our consciousness, every step of our life's journey is marked by a randomness and an improbability. The question is, what does this realization mean for how we will see ourselves, our purpose, and the nature of our existence itself? To understand our life as a cosmic accident, we will have to look at its origins. Around 13.8 billion of our years ago, the Big Bang has marked the beginning of our universe. From an unimaginably small and a hot point, our space, our time, and our matter have begun to unfold. In these early moments, a chaos has reigned. Our particles have collided, our energy has flowed, and over our time, our atoms have formed. Eventually, our gravity has begun to pull these atoms together, by it creating our stars and our galaxies. This process was not directed or purposeful. This was driven by the laws of our physics and the blind forces of our nature. Within the swirling chaos of our universe, one star, a relatively ordinary star in a relatively ordinary galaxy, has formed about 4.6 billion of our years ago. Around it, the debris that was left over from its creation has coalesced into our planets. On one of these planets, our Earth, a unique set of our conditions has come together. A stable orbit, a protective atmosphere, and a temperature range that has allowed our liquid water to exist. Again, there was no intention that was behind this. This was a convergence of a chance and of a physics, a cosmic lottery that our Earth has happened to win. Our life has begun in our oceans. This was likely as our simple organic molecules that have formed and have interacted under our specific conditions. These molecules have eventually given a rise to our self-replicating structures, the first of our primitive forms of our life. From there, our evolution has taken over, a process that itself is based on a randomness. Our mutations will occur by a chance, and only those that will offer some survival advantage will persist. Over billions of our years, this process has led to the incredible diversity of our life that we will see today. By it including us, our conscious beings that are capable of us reflecting on our own existence. But here is the catch. None of this had to happen. If the Big Bang had been slightly different, if the Earth's orbit were slightly closer to or farther from the Sun, if a single mutation in our evolutionary history had not occurred, then we would not be here. The conditions that have allowed for our life, and especially for our intelligent life, are so improbable that they can feel to be almost miraculous. Yet, there is no evidence to suggest that any guiding force or any higher purpose was involved. This is all the result of our natural processes and of our countless of our coincidences. This realization can be both awe-inspiring and unsettling. On the one hand, this can underscore how extraordinary our existence is. The odds of our life that is arising, let alone our intelligent life that is capable of us contemplating its own origins, are astronomically low. On the other hand, this can suggest that we are not central to the universe's story. The cosmos has existed for billions of our years before us, and this will continue for billions more after we are gone. Our lives, our struggles, and even our civilizations are fleeting in the grand scheme of our things. For some, this perspective can raise our questions about our meaning. If our life is an accident, then does that mean that this is meaningless? If the universe is indifferent to our existence, then does that make everything that we will do to be pointless? These are deeply personal questions, and our different thinkers have approached them in our different ways. For our existentialist philosophers, the absence of an inherent meaning is not a problem, but this is an opportunity. They will argue that our meaning is something that we will create. It is not something that we are given. The fact that our life has no predetermined purpose can free us to define our own. Our scientists, too, will find their inspiration in the accidental nature of our life. Rather than them diminishing its value, the randomness of our existence can highlight how remarkable this is. Carl Sagan, for example, has famously described we as humans as being star stuff, by him emphasizing that the elements in our bodies were forged in the hearts of our dying stars. For Sagan, this connection to the cosmos was a source of a wonder and of a humility. This has reminded us that while we may be small, we are also deeply tied to the universe that has created us. Our life as a cosmic accident can also challenge us to rethink our relationship with the world that is around us. If we are the result of a chance, then so is every other living thing. This perspective can foster a sense of a kinship with all of our forms of life, from the tiniest of our microbes to the largest of our whales. This can remind us that we are not separate from our nature, but we are a part of it, a fleeting expression of the same processes that have created our stars and our galaxies. At the same time, this view can make us to be more aware of our responsibility. Our life on our Earth is fragile, and its continued existence will depend on the choices that we will make as a species. To understand how improbable and how precious our life is can motivate us to protect it, not because of any higher purpose, but because we will recognize its intrinsic value. Ultimately, to see our life as a cosmic accident can invite us to embrace our uncertainty. This can ask us to let go of the idea that the universe will owe us any answers or any guarantees. Instead, this can challenge us to find our beauty and our meaning in the randomness of our existence. Our lives may not have been planned, but they are ours to live. And in a universe that is indifferent to our presence, the very act of our living, of our caring, of our wondering, can become a profound expression of what this will mean to exist. The hedonistic treadmill. Our happiness will always seem to be just out of our reach. We will chase our new goals, we will dream of our bigger achievements, and we will tell ourselves that if we only had more money, more success, more love, then we would finally be content. But when we will get those things, the satisfaction will fade, and the cycle will begin again. This endless pursuit is what our psychologists will call the hedonistic treadmill, a concept that can reveal how our search for our happiness will often keep us running in our place. The hedonistic treadmill, or our hedonic adaptation, will refer to our tendency for us to quickly return to a baseline level of our happiness, no matter what will happen in our lives. When we will achieve something that we have long desired, a new job, a raise, a relationship, this can bring a surge of a happiness. But over our time, that excitement will fade as we will adapt to the change. Similarly, our negative experiences, like us losing a job or us going through a breakup, will often cause an initial drop in our happiness, but we will eventually recover and we will return to our baseline. This cycle is not just anecdotal, this is backed by our research. Our studies have shown that even our life-altering events, like us winning the lottery or us experiencing a serious injury, will not have as lasting of an impact on our happiness as we might expect. The people who will win our millions will often find themselves to be no happier a year later than they were before. Similarly, those who will experience their setbacks will frequently adapt to their new circumstances and will find their ways to regain their sense of a well-being. This will not mean that our happiness is impossible for us to achieve, but this will mean that our expectations about what will make us to be happy are often misguided. We will imagine that our external changes, our wealth, our status, our possessions, will transform our lives. But the truth is more complicated. As we will adapt to our new circumstances, what has once felt to be extraordinary will become to be ordinary. The dream house will become just a house. The dream job will become just a work. This adaptation is a part of what will keep us on the treadmill, by us constantly searching for the next thing that might finally bring us a lasting form of a fulfillment. The hedonistic treadmill is rooted in our human evolution. Our ancestors have lived in our environments where our survival has depended on a continuous effort. To stay alive has required a constantly seeking for our food, our shelter, and our safety. And those who have become to be complacent were less likely to pass on their genes. This drive for more has served us well in our past, but in our modern society, this will often leave us with our feeling to be unsatisfied. No matter how much that we will achieve or we will acquire, this will never seem to be enough. To understand the hedonistic treadmill can help us to break free from its grip. One of our important insights is that our material wealth and our external success will have their diminishing returns when this will come to our happiness. Our research can show that while our money can improve our well-being up to a certain point, by it meeting our basic needs and by it reducing our financial stress, beyond that, its impact on our happiness is minimal. After we are achieving our financial stability, to accumulate more wealth will not significantly increase our life satisfaction. Yet many of us will continue to chase it, by us believing that this will hold the key to our happiness. Another way for us to step off the treadmill is for us to focus on our experiences rather than on our possessions. Our studies will suggest that our experiences, like our traveling or our spending our time with our loved ones, will bring a more lasting form of a happiness than our material goods will. This is partly because our experiences can create our memories and can deepen our connections with others, while our possessions will tend to lose their novelty over our time. To invest in our relationships, our personal growth, and our meaningful activities can bring a sense of a fulfillment that our material success will often fail to provide. Our gratitude is another powerful tool for us to counter the effects of our hedonic adaptation. By us actively appreciating what we already have, we can shift our focus from what is missing to what is present. To practice our gratitude has been shown to increase our happiness, to reduce our stress, and to improve our relationships. This can remind us that our contentment will not come from us acquiring more, but this will come from us valuing what is already in our lives. Our mindfulness can also play a key role in us breaking free from the hedonistic treadmill. By us cultivating an awareness of the present moment, we can learn to appreciate the simple pleasures of our life without us constantly striving for more. Our mindfulness can help us to recognize when we are caught in the cycle of our wanting, and this can remind us that our happiness is not a destination, but this is a state of a being. While the hedonistic treadmill can highlight the challenges of us maintaining our happiness, this can also reveal our resilience. Our ability to adapt to both our positive and our negative experiences is a testament to the human capacity for a growth and for a recovery. Our life will always bring its ups and its downs, but to understand how our hedonic adaptation will work can help us to approach these fluctuations with a greater sense of an awareness and of a balance. The hedonistic treadmill will not mean that we should stop our striving or our setting our goals. Our ambition and our progress are essential parts of our life. But this will challenge us to rethink why we will pursue our certain things and whether they will truly bring the satisfaction that we will seek. This can invite us to step back and to ask whether we are running towards something that is meaningful or we are simply running in our circles. Ultimately, the treadmill is not about the things that we will chase. This is about how we will engage with our life. By us shifting our focus from our external achievements to our internal contentment, we can begin to move away from the endless cycle of our striving and toward a deeper, a more lasting sense of a happiness. The treadmill may be a part of our human nature, but with our awareness and our intention, we can learn to walk at our own pace. By us savoring the journey, instead of us endlessly chasing the finish line. Philosophical pessimism. Our life is inherently filled with our struggle, our suffering, and our unfulfilled desires. This stark view will lie at the core of our philosophical pessimism, a school of a thought that can challenge the optimism that is often associated with our human existence. Our philosophical pessimism will not aim to depress or to discourage, but this is to confront our life's harsh realities with a sense of an honesty. This can invite us to question our assumptions about our progress, our happiness, and the meaning of our life itself. The foundations of our philosophical pessimism are often traced back to the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. For Schopenhauer, the root of our human suffering is the will to live, a blind, insatiable force that will drive all of our living beings. This will can manifest as an endless striving, where every fulfilled desire will lead to another, by it creating a cycle of a frustration and of a fleeting satisfaction. Schopenhauer has believed that this relentless striving is not only exhausting, but this is ultimately futile, as this will perpetuate a dissatisfaction and a suffering. Schopenhauer's view of our life as being inherently painful will extend beyond our individual struggles. He has argued that our suffering is woven into the very fabric of our existence, by it affecting all of our living beings. Our predators will hunt our prey, our illnesses will afflict our body, and our death will loom over every life. While our moments of a happiness or of a pleasure will exist, they are temporary, and they will often come at the expense of others. Schopenhauer has viewed these fleeting joys not as an evidence of our life's value, but as a brief respite in an otherwise grim reality. Another influential voice in our philosophical pessimism is Friedrich Nietzsche, who, while he is often associated with our existentialism, has also grappled with our pessimistic ideas. Nietzsche has challenged Schopenhauer's resignation to our life's suffering by him proposing a philosophy of an affirmation. He has acknowledged the harshness of our existence, but he has argued that we must embrace our life's struggles and our chaos as essential parts of us being alive. For Nietzsche, The recognition of our life's difficulties will not demand a despair. This will call for a re-evaluation of how we will confront and we will interpret those difficulties. Our philosophical pessimism can also find its resonance in the works of the Romanian philosopher Emil Cioran, who has taken a deeply personal approach to the theme of our suffering. Cioran's writing is filled with his reflections on the absurdity of our existence, the inevitability of our death, and the fragility of our human aspirations. He has described our life as a continuous struggle against a despair, where our moments of clarity will often reveal the emptiness that is beneath our pursuits. For Cioran, a pessimism was not a philosophy to be solved, but this was a lens through which for him to see our life more clearly. One of the most compelling of the aspects of our philosophical pessimism is its critique of our progress. While many of our people will believe in the idea of a continuous improvement, whether this is through our technology, our society, or our personal growth, our philosophical pessimists will challenge this narrative. They will argue that while our circumstances may change, the fundamental nature of our human suffering will remain to be constant. Our technological advancements might alleviate our certain hardships, but they will often create our new forms of a discontent. Similarly, our societal progress may improve our living conditions, but this cannot eliminate our existential suffering or the limitations of our mortality. Our philosophical pessimism can also question our pursuit of our happiness as a primary goal. This can suggest that the relentless focus on us achieving our happiness will often lead to a greater sense of a disappointment, as our happiness is elusive and it is transient. Instead of us chasing an idealized state of a contentment, our pessimists will encourage us to accept the imperfections and the limitations of our life. This acceptance will not mean that we are giving up, but this is us learning to navigate our existence without the constant pressure for us to find an ultimate form of a fulfillment. One of the ways that our philosophical pessimism can offer us solace is by it emphasizing a solidarity in our suffering. By us recognizing that our pain and our struggle are our universal experiences, our pessimism can foster a sense of a connection and of a compassion. If our suffering is an inevitable part of our life, then our shared vulnerability can be a source of an empathy and of an understanding. This perspective can encourage us to care for one another, not because our life is perfect, but because we are all navigating its challenges together. Our philosophical pessimism can also provide a counterbalance to our overly simplistic or our idealistic views of our life. In a world that will often glorify our positivity and our success, our pessimism can serve as a reminder that our struggle is a natural and a valid part of our existence. This can allow us to approach our life with a sense of a realism, by us acknowledging its difficulties without us being consumed by them. In this way, our pessimism can be a grounding force, by it helping us to maintain our perspective in the face of our hardship. Critics of our philosophical pessimism will often accuse this of being defeatist or overly negative. They will argue that to focus on our life struggles will risk us ignoring its beauty, its joy, and its potential. However, many of our pessimists would disagree with this characterization. They will not deny that our beauty and our joy will exist. They will simply refuse to ignore the suffering that will accompany them. For our pessimists to acknowledge the full spectrum of our human experience, by it including its darker aspects, is essential for us to understand and to appreciate our life. Our philosophical pessimism will not provide any easy answers or any comforting illusions. This will not promise a better future or a hidden purpose that is behind our life struggles. Instead, this can challenge us to confront our existence as this is, without any sugarcoating or any avoidance. This confrontation, while this is difficult, can also be liberating. By us letting go of our unrealistic expectations, we can engage with our life on its own terms, by us finding a meaning in the act of us living itself. Ultimately, our philosophical pessimism is not a philosophy of a despair, but this is one of an honesty. This can ask us to look at our life without us flinching, for us to acknowledge its hardships without us turning away. In us doing so, this can offer a deeper understanding of what this will mean to be human. A mix of our pain, our joy, our hope, and our doubt. All of them are bound together in the complex, the unrelenting experience of our existence. Eco-philosophy. Our humanity has built a world that will often forget its roots. Our cities will rise, our resources are extracted, and our ecosystems are reshaped. All of them are to serve our human needs. But at what cost? Our eco-philosophy and our deep ecology can challenge this way of our thinking by them urging us to reconsider our relationship with our natural world. They can confront the assumption that we as humans are the center of our existence, by them placing all of our life forms and our ecosystems on an equal footing. Our eco-philosophy is a broad field that will explore the ethical, the spiritual, and the philosophical dimensions of our environment. This is not just about us preserving our nature. This is about us rethinking how we will perceive and we will interact with the world that is around us. This can challenge the anthropocentric mindset, the belief that we as humans are superior to our other life forms and that our nature will exist solely for our use. Instead, our eco-philosophy can propose a holistic view of our life, where we as humans are seen as one part of a vast interconnected web. One of the most influential of the movements within our eco-philosophy is our deep ecology, a term that was coined by the Norwegian philosopher Arne Næss in the 1970s. Our deep ecology will go beyond the surface-level concerns of our traditional environmentalism, such as our pollution and our resource management. While these issues are important, our deep ecology will argue that they will treat our symptoms rather than them addressing the root cause of our environmental degradation, our humanity's flawed relationship with our nature. Our deep ecology can ask us to shift from a shallow utilitarian view of our environment to a deeper understanding of the intrinsic value of all of our living beings. Under this framework, a tree is not valuable because this will provide some wood or this will absorb some carbon dioxide. This is valuable simply because this will exist. This perspective can challenge the exploitative mindset that has driven much of our human progress, by it inviting us to see our natural world as a community to which we will belong, rather than as a resource to be used. At the heart of our deep ecology is the principle of a biocentric equality, the idea that all of our living things will have an equal right to live and to flourish. This will not mean that we as humans should abandon our needs or our desires, but this will call for a radical re-evaluation of our priorities. This can ask us to consider the impact of our actions on the entire web of our life, not just on ourselves. By us recognizing the interconnectedness of all of our beings, our deep ecology can seek to foster a sense of a humility and of a responsibility. The implications of our deep ecology are profound. This can challenge the economic systems that will prioritize our growth and our consumption over our ecological balance. This can question the narratives of our human exceptionalism that have justified the destruction of our habitats and our species. And this can call for a transformation in how we will approach everything from our agriculture to our energy production, by it emphasizing our sustainability and our coexistence over our exploitation. Our philosophers and our activists within the deep ecology movement will often highlight the spiritual dimensions of this perspective. They will argue that to reconnect with our nature is not just an ecological necessity, but this is a path to our personal and our collective well-being. Many of our indigenous traditions, for example, have long embraced the idea that we as humans are a part of a larger natural order, with our responsibilities to the land and to its inhabitants. Our deep ecology can draw its inspiration from these worldviews, by it seeking to integrate them into our modern environmental thought. Critics of our deep ecology will sometimes argue that its principles are too idealistic or are too impractical in a world that is driven by our economic and our political interests. They will question whether our humanity can truly prioritize the needs of our ecosystems over its own short-term goals. Others will worry that our deep ecology's emphasis on a biocentric equality could lead to our difficult ethical dilemmas, such as how to balance our human survival with the protection of our other species. These criticisms can highlight the tension between our deep ecology's vision and the realities of our human society. Despite these challenges, our deep ecology can offer a powerful lens through which for us to view the environmental crises of our time. This can remind us that the destruction of our ecosystems is not just an environmental issue. This is a moral and a philosophical failure. By us treating our nature as a commodity, we can undermine the very systems that will sustain our life. Our deep ecology can invite us to imagine a different future, one where our humanity will live in a harmony with our Earth, by it respecting its limits and by it celebrating its diversity. Our eco-philosophy and our deep ecology can also provide a practical guidance for our individuals and our communities. They can encourage our local, sustainable practices that will reduce our harm to our environment. They can promote our education and our awareness about the interdependence of our life. And they can inspire our grassroots movements that will challenge the systems and the policies that are driving our ecological destruction. These efforts may not solve every problem, but they will represent a crucial step toward us aligning our human activities with the principles of our deep ecology. Perhaps the most radical of the aspects of our eco-philosophy and of our deep ecology is their call for a shift in our consciousness. They can ask us to move beyond us seeing our nature as something that is separate from ourselves, and to instead recognize that we are deeply embedded within it. This shift is not easy. This will require us to confront our long-held beliefs, for us to rethink our values, and for us to accept that our humanity is not the pinnacle of our life, but this is one part of a larger whole. In a world that is facing our climate change, our biodiversity loss, and our resource depletion, the ideas of our eco-philosophy and of our deep ecology are more relevant than ever. They can challenge us to look beyond our immediate solutions and to address the deeper issues that are at the heart of our environmental crisis. They can remind us that the health of our planet is inseparable from our own well-being, and that by us caring for our Earth, we are ultimately caring for ourselves. Our eco-philosophy and our deep ecology may not offer any quick fixes, but they can provide a vision of what is possible. A world where our humanity will learn to live within its means. It will respect the rights of all of our beings, and it will find its meaning not in a domination, but in a connection. This vision is both a challenge and an invitation, by it calling us to rethink what this will mean to be human in a world that is infinitely larger and more complex than ourselves. Existential loneliness. No matter how connected that we are, how deeply that we will love, or how closely that we will bond, there is a part of us that will remain to be fundamentally alone. This is our existential loneliness, the deep, pervasive sense of a solitude that will stem not from the absence of others, but from the nature of our existence itself. This is the recognition that as our individuals, we are ultimately isolated in our inner experiences, by us carrying the weight of our existence all alone. Our existential loneliness is not about us being physically alone. This is not the same as our social isolation or our temporary feeling of us missing someone. Instead, this is rooted in the realization that no one can fully understand or can share the entirety of another person's inner world. No matter how well that we will articulate our thoughts or how closely that we will connect with someone, our subjective experiences will remain to be uniquely ours. This inherent separateness is a condition of us being human. Our philosophers and our writers have long grappled with this profound sense of an isolation. Søren Kierkegaard, who is often regarded as the father of our existentialism, has spoken of the individual's relationship to our existence as being a solitary journey. He has believed that to confront this solitude was essential for our personal growth and our authenticity. For Kierkegaard, the individual must face the truth of their aloneness to live a meaningful and an authentic life. In this sense, our existential loneliness is not just a burden, this is also a call for us to engage with ourselves deeply and honestly. Friedrich Nietzsche has explored a similar idea through his concept of the Übermensch, or the Overman. He has seen the journey toward our self-realization as being inherently solitary, by it requiring our individuals to transcend our societal norms and to find their own values. For Nietzsche, our existential loneliness was a necessary part of this process. This was not something to be avoided, but this was to be embraced as a source of a strength and of an individuality. The loneliness of us standing apart from the crowd, of us forging our own path, was central to his vision of a fulfilled life. Our existential loneliness is also tied to our awareness of our mortality. As our conscious beings, we will understand that our lives are finite, and that no one else can share the experience of our death. This knowledge can create a profound sense of a solitude, as we will realize that we alone must face the uncertainty of what will lie beyond. For Martin Heidegger, this awareness of our mortality was central to our human condition. He has described the concept of our being toward death, by him emphasizing that the inevitability of our death will shape how we will live, and how we will confront our own existence. Our existential loneliness in this context is inescapable. This is woven into our awareness of our life's fragility. At the same time, our existential loneliness can be a source of a creativity and of an insight. Our writers, our artists, and our thinkers have often drawn on their experiences of an isolation to create their works that will resonate deeply with others. Franz Kafka's writings, for instance, will reflect a profound sense of an alienation and of a solitude, yet they will speak to our universal feelings of a disconnection. This paradox can highlight one of the unique aspects of our existential loneliness. While this is deeply personal, this is also a shared human experience. In us acknowledging our isolation, we can find a strange form of a connection with others who will feel the same. Our existential loneliness can also raise our questions about the nature of our relationships. Can we ever truly know another person, or are our connections ultimately limited by the boundaries of our own subjectivity? Jean-Paul Sartre has explored this tension in his existential philosophy, particularly in his play, No Exit. He has argued that while we will crave a connection, we will often misunderstand, or we will objectify others in our attempts to bridge the gap that is between ourselves and them. For Sartre, the struggle to connect authentically is an inevitable part of our human condition. Yet, our existential loneliness is not necessarily something to be overcome or to be fixed. Many of our existentialists will see this as an opportunity for us to confront the deeper truths of our life. By us acknowledging our aloneness, we are forced to grapple with our questions of our meaning, our purpose, and our identity on our own terms. This can be a source of an anxiety, but this can also lead to a profound sense of a self-discovery and of a growth. In this way, our existential loneliness is both a challenge and a gift. This can push us to seek an understanding and an authenticity in a world that will often feel to be disconnected. Our modern psychology has also explored the impact of our existential loneliness on our mental health and our well-being. Some of our researchers will argue that to acknowledge and to accept this form of a loneliness can be a pathway to a resilience and a self-acceptance. By us understanding that our existential loneliness is a natural part of our life, we can move away from our feelings of an inadequacy or of a despair, and we can focus on us building our meaningful connections with others. These connections may not erase our loneliness, but they can provide a comfort and a sense of a shared humanity. Our existential loneliness is a reminder of both the limits and the richness of our human experience. This can force us to face the fact that no one else can live our lives for us, can think our thoughts, or can feel our feelings. But this can also remind us of the value of a connection, of an empathy, and of an understanding. While we may never fully bridge the gap that is between ourselves and others, the attempt to do so is what will make our relationships to be meaningful. In the end, our existential loneliness is neither entirely good nor entirely bad. This is simply a part of what this will mean to be human. This can challenge us to look inward, to confront our fears and our uncertainties, and to find our own paths in a complex and often a confusing world. By us embracing our aloneness, we can learn to live with a greater sense of an authenticity and of an openness. By us finding a meaning, not in us escaping our loneliness, but in us facing this with a courage and with a compassion. Misanthropy and philosophy. Our humanity is flawed, perhaps so flawed that some of our philosophers have questioned whether this will deserve its place in the world. Our misanthropy, or the distrust and the critique of our humanity, has long been a theme in our philosophy, by it challenging our understanding of ourselves, of our values, and of our impact on the world. This is not about us hating our individual people, but this is about us questioning the collective nature of our humanity, its tendencies, its choices, and the consequences of its actions. Our philosophical misanthropy is not simply a cynicism or a bitterness. This is a serious critique of our human nature. This can examine the ways in which our humanity will fall short of its ideals, by it often focusing on the harm that we will inflict on ourselves, on others, and on the planet. For our thinkers like Arthur Schopenhauer, our misanthropy has stemmed from a deep skepticism about our human behavior. Schopenhauer has seen our humanity as being driven by the will to live, a blind, insatiable force that will lead to a constant striving, a competition, and a suffering. He has argued that we as human beings, far from us being rational or virtuous, are largely governed by a selfishness and by our irrational desires. Friedrich Nietzsche, another pivotal figure, has approached our misanthropy differently. While Nietzsche has criticized our humanity for its herd mentality and its tendency to cling to a comfort and to a mediocrity, he did not reject our humanity outright. Instead, he has seen these flaws as our challenges to be overcome. Nietzsche's misanthropy was not a dismissal of our humanity, but this was a call for a transformation, a demand that we will confront our limitations, and that we will strive to become our better versions of ourselves. Our philosophical misanthropy will often emerge from a sense of a disappointment. The ancient Greek philosopher Diogenes of Sinope, a key figure in our cynicism, is remembered for his sharp critiques of our human hypocrisy and our vanity. He is said to have wandered the streets with a lantern, by him searching for an honest man. Diogenes has rejected the social conventions and the materialism of his time, by him believing that our humanity's pursuit of a wealth, of a power, and of a status had corrupted its moral character. His misanthropy was not rooted in a hatred, but this was in a frustration with our humanity's failure to live authentically and virtuously. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a more hopeful thinker, has also expressed our misanthropic ideas in his critique of our civilization. Rousseau has believed that our humanity was inherently good in its natural state, but this had been corrupted by our society. He has argued that our pursuit of a progress and of a modernity had alienated our people from their true nature, by it leading to an inequality, a greed, and a moral decay. While Rousseau's misanthropy was directed at the collective flaws of our civilization, this has carried an underlying belief in the possibility of a redemption through a return to a simplicity and a connection with our nature. Our modern misanthropic philosophy will often focus on our humanity's impact on our planet. Our environmental philosophers like Anna Ness and our thinkers that are associated with the deep ecology movement will argue that our humanity's exploitation of our nature will reflect a dangerous form of an anthropocentrism. This perspective will see our humanity as a destructive force by it prioritizing its own interests at the expense of our other species and our ecosystems. While not all of our environmentalists are our misanthropes, this critique of our humanity's role in our ecological crisis will align with our misanthropy's broader distrust of our human behavior. Our misanthropy can also take an existential turn, by it questioning whether our humanity's existence will have any inherent value. Emile Cioran, a 20th century philosopher, has written extensively about the absurdity and the futility of our human life. For Cioran, our humanity's relentless pursuit of a meaning has often masked its deeper flaws, its arrogance, its destructiveness, and its inability to confront its own limitations. Yet, Cioran's work can also reveal a dark sense of humor and a recognition of the resilience and the contradictions of our human condition. Critics of our philosophical misanthropy will often argue that this is overly harsh or is dismissive of our humanity's potential. They will point to our acts of a kindness, of a creativity, and of a progress as an evidence that our humanity is capable of a greatness. While our misanthropy will highlight our humanity's failures, this will risk us overlooking its capacity for a compassion, an innovation, and a resilience. However, many of our misanthropic philosophers would counter that their critique is not an absolute condemnation, but this is an attempt for them to confront our uncomfortable truths. By us acknowledging our humanity's flaws, they will argue, we can begin to address them. One of the most challenging of the aspects of our misanthropy is its moral implications. If our humanity is fundamentally flawed, then what should we do about this? Should we strive to change? Or should we accept our limitations? Our philosophers like Nietzsche have seen our misanthropy as a call to an action, by them urging our humanity to overcome its weaknesses and to embrace its potential. Others, like Schopenhauer, will lean toward a resignation, by them viewing the flaws of our humanity as being inherent and unchangeable. Our philosophical misanthropy can force us to grapple with our difficult questions about our nature and about our future. Are our flaws a product of our circumstance, or are they inherent to who we are? Can we rise above our tendencies towards our selfishness, our violence, and our destruction, or are these traits inseparable from our humanity? These questions are not easy for us to answer, but they are vital for us to understand our human condition. Ultimately, our misanthropy and our philosophy is not about us rejecting our humanity, but this is about us holding a mirror up to it. This can ask us to confront our failures, to question our assumptions, and to rethink what this will mean to be human. Whether this will lead to a despair, a hope, or a transformation, our philosophical misanthropy can challenge us to take a hard look at ourselves and to consider how we can do better. In us doing so, this can invite us not to turn away from our humanity, but to engage with this more honestly and more thoughtfully than ever before. Transhumanism. What if our humanity could take control of its own evolution, by it enhancing our bodies and our minds beyond anything that our nature has ever intended? This is the vision of our transhumanism, a movement that will seek to use our technology to overcome the biological limitations of the human body and to redefine what this will mean to be human. This is not science fiction anymore. Our transhumanism is a rapidly growing field of thought, by it blending our philosophy, our ethics, and our cutting-edge science to imagine a future where we as humans are no longer bound by our aging, our disease, or even our death. Our transhumanism will begin with a simple premise. We as human beings are not the final stage of our evolution. For our centuries, we have adapted to our environment through a natural selection. But our transhumanists will argue that we are now in a position for us to direct our own development. Our advances in our artificial intelligence, our biotechnology, our nanotechnology, and our neuroscience are making this to be possible for us to fundamentally alter the way that we will live, we will think, and we will interact with our world. One of the key goals of our transhumanism is for us to eliminate the physical vulnerabilities of the human body. Our aging, for example, is often seen as an inevitable part of our life. But our transhumanists will view this as a problem to be solved. Our scientists are already exploring our ways to slow, to stop, or even to reverse the aging process through a cellular repair, a genetic editing, and our therapies that will target the root causes of our aging. The dream of a significantly extended lifespan, or even of an immortality, is no longer outside the realm of a possibility. Our disease is another frontier. Our modern medicine has already made our incredible strides in us treating our illnesses, but our transhumanism can envision a world where our diseases like our cancer, our Alzheimer's, and our heart disease are entirely eradicated. Our gene editing tools, like our CRISPR, are being used to correct our genetic defects and to strengthen our immunity, while our advances in our prosthetics and our bioengineering are enabling the replacement of our damaged organs and our tissues with our more durable, our efficient alternatives. Our transhumanism is not just about our physical enhancement. This can also seek to expand our human intelligence and our cognitive capabilities. Our brain-computer interfaces, for instance, are being developed to allow a direct communication between our minds and our machines. This technology could enhance our memory, could improve our problem-solving abilities, and could even enable our new forms of a creativity and of an expression. You can imagine a future where our knowledge is instantly accessible, not by us looking at a screen, but by us directly integrating this into our mind. At its core, our transhumanism is a philosophy of an improvement, but this can raise our profound ethical questions. If we will enhance our human capabilities, then who will get an access to these technologies? Will they be available to everyone, or will they create a new divide between the enhanced and the unenhanced? Our critics will worry about a future where our wealth will determine not just our material comfort, but our biological advantage, by it exacerbating our existing inequalities and by it creating a society of our technological haves and our have-nots. Another ethical concern is the question of our identity. As we will integrate more of our technology into our bodies and our minds, where can we draw the line between a human and a machine? If you will replace enough of the parts of yourself with our artificial components, then are you still you? Our transhumanists will argue that our identity is not tied to our biology. This is about our consciousness and our experience. Yet this view can challenge our long-held notions of what this will mean to be human, and this can force us to reconsider the boundaries of our personhood. Our transhumanism can also venture into the philosophical territory of our purpose and our meaning. If we will eliminate our suffering, we will extend our life indefinitely, and we will enhance our cognitive abilities. Then what will our life look like? For some, this vision is utopian, by it offering our endless opportunities for our growth, our exploration, and our self-fulfillment. For others, this can raise our concerns about a stagnation, a boredom, or a loss of our humanity's essential character. If our struggle and our limitation are integral to our human experience, then what will happen when those elements are removed? The movement is not without its critics. Some will argue that our transhumanism's pursuit of a perfection will overlook the unintended consequences of us altering our complex biological systems. Others will worry that the focus on our enhancement will distract from us addressing our pressing global issues like our poverty, our climate change, and our political instability. Our transhumanists will counter that their vision is not about us escaping these challenges, but this is about us equipping our humanity with the tools for us to solve them more effectively. One of the most controversial of the aspects of our transhumanism is its potential for us to transcend our death itself. The idea of us uploading our consciousness into a digital format, a concept that is often referred to as a mind uploading, can suggest that we could achieve a kind of an immortality by us transferring our thoughts, our memories, and our personalities into our machines. While this possibility is still speculative, this can raise our profound questions about the nature of our consciousness. If your mind can be copied into a digital format, then is that truly you? Or is this just a replica? And what will happen to the original you? The environmental implications of our transhumanism are also significant. Some of our proponents will argue that to enhance our human efficiency, such as by us reducing our need for our food or our energy, could help to alleviate the strain on our planet's resources. Others will point to the risks of a technological overreach, where our unregulated advancements could lead to our unforeseen consequences for our ecosystems and our biodiversity. Our transhumanism will ultimately force us to think about the long-term trajectory of us as humans. Are we content to remain as we are, or do we embrace the tools of our science and our technology to redefine ourselves? This is a question that can invite a reflection on our values, our aspirations, and our responsibilities. Our transhumanists will believe that by us pushing the boundaries of what is possible, we can create a future where our humanity will thrive in our ways that we can scarcely imagine today. The journey of our transhumanism is just beginning, and this can promise to be both exhilarating and challenging. This is a vision of our humanity, not as this is, but as this could become. Whether that future is one of a liberation or of a division, of a progress or of a peril, will depend on how we will navigate the opportunities and the risks of this extraordinary moment in our history. The question is not just whether we can enhance our humanity, but this is whether we should, and what kind of a future that we will want to create together. The paradox of freedom. Our freedom is the ultimate aspiration of our humanity, yet this is often burdened with our contradictions. The paradox of our freedom will lie in the tension that is between our desire for a complete form of an autonomy and the inevitable constraints that can make our freedom to be meaningful. This is a concept that has perplexed our philosophers, our writers, and our thinkers throughout our history, by it revealing that our freedom is not as simple as this will seem. You can imagine a world where you could do absolutely anything. There would be no laws, no expectations, no responsibilities. At first, this might sound to be exhilarating, but this can quickly become to be overwhelming. Without any structure or any boundaries, our choices will lose their significance. If everything is permissible, then nothing will feel to be truly meaningful. This is the paradox. Our absolute freedom can feel like no freedom at all. For our freedom to matter, this must exist within our limits. This paradox can become to be clearer when we will examine the relationship that is between our freedom and our responsibility. To be free is to have our choices, but with our choices will come our consequences. Our true freedom will mean that we are owning those consequences. Yet, the weight of our responsibility can feel to be restrictive. The more of our freedom that we will have, the more of our responsibility that we will bear, by it creating a delicate balance. For example, when a society will grant our individuals the freedom for them to speak and to act as they will wish, this must also establish our systems of an accountability to prevent any harm. These rules, though they may appear to limit our freedom, are what will enable this to thrive. Our philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre have explored this tension through our existentialism, by them emphasizing the burden of our freedom. Sartre has argued that we as humans are condemned to be free, which will mean that we are forced to confront the full weight of our choices without the comfort of our predetermined paths. This absolute freedom can feel to be paralyzing. If everything is a choice, then how can we know what is right or what is meaningful? Sartre has believed that the answer will lie in us creating our own values, but this process is neither easy nor comforting. Our freedom, in this sense, is both empowering and terrifying. Another layer of the paradox will emerge when we will consider our freedom in the context of our relationships and our society. We as humans are inherently our social beings, and our true freedom cannot exist in an isolation. Yet our interactions with others will inevitably involve a compromise. To live in a harmony, we must sometimes limit our own freedom for the sake of others. This tension is evident in our debates about our laws and our governance. While our laws will restrict our individual behavior, they will also create the stability that is necessary for our collective freedom. Without our laws, our society would descend into a chaos, where the strong will dominate the weak, and our true freedom will become to be impossible for most. Our freedom can also interact with our desire in our paradoxical ways. When our people will think of our freedom, they will often imagine the ability for them to fulfill their desires without any interference. But our desires themselves can become a form of a bondage. Our addiction, our obsession, or even our relentless pursuit of our success can trap us in our cycles of a dependency, by it eroding our sense of an autonomy. In this way, our unrestrained freedom for us to follow our impulses can lead to a loss of a deeper form of a freedom, the ability for us to act in an alignment with our true selves. This idea is central to the philosophy of our Stoicism, which will teach that our true freedom will come not from our external circumstances, but this will come from a mastery over our internal states. By us cultivating a self-discipline and by us focusing on what is within our control, we can free ourselves from us being enslaved by our external events or our emotions. For the Stoics, our freedom is not the absence of our constraints, but this is the ability for us to navigate them with a sense of a wisdom and of an integrity. The paradox of our freedom can also manifest in our modern world's obsession with a choice. We will live in an era of an unprecedented amount of our options, our endless career paths, our products, and our lifestyles. But this abundance of a choice can lead to a decision fatigue and a dissatisfaction. Our psychologists have found that too many of our options will often make our people to feel less satisfied with their choices, as they will constantly wonder if a better option was left behind. In this way, our pursuit of an unlimited form of a freedom can paradoxically make us to feel to be trapped, to be uncertain, and to be unfulfilled. Our cultural and our historical context can further complicate the paradox. In many of our societies, our freedom has been framed as a liberation from an oppression, whether this is political, this is economic, or this is social. Yet even in our pursuit of a liberation, our new structures of a power and of a control will often emerge. Our revolutions that will overthrow our tyrannical regimes will sometimes replace them with our equally oppressive systems, by it revealing that our pursuit of our freedom is fraught with our unintended consequences. The desire for our freedom can lead to its very erosion. On a more personal level, the paradox of our freedom will play out in our relationships with ourselves. We will often think of our freedom as us doing whatever that we will want, but sometimes, what we will want in the moment will conflict with our long-term goals. Our discipline and our self-restraint might feel like our limitations, but they are often what will enable us to achieve a meaningful form of a freedom over our time. A musician who will practice for hours every day may sacrifice their leisure, but that discipline will allow them the freedom for them to express themselves fully through their art. Similarly, to choose for us to adhere to our certain principles or our commitments can provide a sense of a purpose that an unrestrained form of a freedom will not be able to. The paradox can also challenge how we will view our progress. Our technological advancements will often promise a greater form of a freedom. Our freedom for us to communicate, for us to travel, and for us to access our information. Yet these same technologies can become our tools of a surveillance, of a distraction, or of a dependence. Our social media, for instance, will offer a freedom of an expression, but this can also trap us in our echo chambers or in our addictive behaviors. The tools that we will create to liberate ourselves can become the very chains that will bind us. Ultimately, the paradox of our freedom can force us to confront the complexity of our human existence. Our freedom is not about the absence of our constraints, but this is about us finding a balance within them. This is about us recognizing that our boundaries and our responsibilities are not the enemies of our freedom, but they are its foundation. Our true freedom is not an infinite choice or an unrestrained action. This is the ability for us to live in an alignment with our values, for us to navigate our life's constraints with a sense of a purpose, and for us to find a meaning in the delicate balance that is between our autonomy and our connection. The paradox of our freedom is not a problem to be solved, but this is a reality to be embraced. This can challenge us to think deeply about what we will value, how we will live, and what this will truly mean to be free. Far from it diminishing our freedom, this paradox can enrich this by reminding us that the most profound of our forms of our liberty will come not from us escaping our limitations, but from us understanding and us working within them. The red button thought experiment. You can imagine a red button that is sitting in front of you. To press this would instantly and painlessly erase all of our humanity. There would be no suffering, no lingering effects, just a complete and a total cessation of the human race. Now you can ask yourself, would you press this? This is the red button thought experiment. A simple but a profound scenario that can force us to confront our deep questions about the value of our existence, the nature of our suffering, and the moral weight of our choices. The thought experiment will begin with the premise that our humanity is deeply flawed. Our wars, our environmental destruction, our inequality, and our suffering are our inescapable parts of our history and of our present. The person who is contemplating the button is often asked for them to consider whether our humanity's existence will cause more harm than it will good. Is the world better off with we as humans? Or would the absence of our species alleviate the suffering that we will cause, both to ourselves and to the planet? The red button can offer a radical solution, an end to all of our human suffering forever. This thought experiment is not about an impulsive form of a decision-making. This can invite a careful reflection on the complexities of our human existence. First, this can force us to weigh the value of our life itself. Is our existence inherently valuable, regardless of the suffering that this will entail? Some will argue that our life, even with all of its imperfections, is worth us preserving because this will hold the potential for our beauty, our love, our creativity, and our growth. Others will counter that these positive aspects of our life are outweighed by the pervasive suffering that is experienced by our countless of our individuals, both our human and our non-human ones. To grapple with the red button, one must also consider the nature of our suffering. Some of our philosophers, like Arthur Schopenhauer, have argued that our life is primarily a cycle of a desire and of a dissatisfaction, where our fleeting moments of a happiness are overshadowed by a pain and a struggle. From this perspective, the red button might seem to be like an act of a mercy, by it ending the perpetual churn of our suffering. However, others will see our suffering as an intrinsic part of our existence, a force that will give a depth and a meaning to our life. Without our suffering, would we truly appreciate our joy, our love, or our achievement? Another layer of the thought experiment can explore the ethics of us making such a decision for our humanity as a whole. Even if one will believe that to press the button would eliminate our suffering, does anyone have the right for them to make that choice for our billions of our people? Our humanity is not a monolith. Our individuals will experience our life in our vastly different ways. While some will endure a profound sense of a suffering, others will find an immense value and a fulfillment in their lives. The red button can reduce this diversity to a binary decision by it assuming that a single perspective can encapsulate the experience of all. There is also the question of a hope. Our humanity, despite its flaws, has shown a remarkable sense of a resilience and a capacity for a change. Our scientific advancements, our social progress, and our acts of a compassion can demonstrate that we are capable of us addressing our problems and of us improving our world. To press the button would erase not only our humanity's suffering, but this would also erase its potential. Could we ever justify us ending the possibility of a brighter future, even in the face of our current hardships? For those who will lean toward them pressing the button, our environmental considerations will often play a significant role. We as humans have caused an immense amount of harm to our planet, by us driving our species to an extinction, by us polluting our ecosystems, and by us altering our climate. Without our humanity, our Earth might recover, by it returning to a state of a natural balance. But this can raise a further question. Does our planet itself have an intrinsic value? This is independent of a human perception. If our humanity is gone, then who will witness or will appreciate our Earth's restoration? And does that matter? The thought experiment can also invite us to examine our own biases and our emotions. For some, the urge to press the button might stem from a personal despair or a frustration with our humanity's failings. For others, the decision to abstain may be rooted in an instinctive aversion to us causing a harm, even if this is hypothetically. The red button can expose the tension that is between our reason and our emotion, by it challenging us to think critically about our motivations and our values. A compelling twist to the experiment is the possibility that the red button is an illusion, a test that is designed not to be pressed. In this interpretation, the presence of the button itself is a challenge to our humanity's self-awareness and its ethical reasoning. By us choosing not to press it, we can affirm our belief in the worth of our existence, despite its imperfections. The button can become a mirror that will reflect our hopes, our fears, and our beliefs about what this will mean to be human. Ultimately, the red button thought experiment is less about the act of us pressing or of us not pressing the button, and this is more about the questions that this will raise. This can force us to confront the profound complexity of our existence, where our suffering and our joy, our destruction and our creation, our despair and our hope, all of them are intertwined. This can challenge us to think deeply about the nature of our life, the ethics of our choice, and our place in our universe. The thought experiment will not provide any easy answers, nor is this meant to. Its purpose is to provoke a reflection, by it encouraging us to examine our values and our assumptions. In the end, the red button will remain to be unpressed, not because the decision is clear, but because the act of us wrestling with its implications is what will make the question to be so powerful. Through this exploration, we can come to understand more about ourselves, our relationship to our humanity, and the weight of our choices that will shape our existence itself. Simulation theory. What if everything that you will know, every moment of a joy, every hardship, and every thought will exist within a simulation? Our simulation theory will propose that our reality might not be the fundamental one, but this is a creation of our advanced beings, or our systems. This can suggest that what we will perceive as being physical and concrete might be no more real than the worlds that are inside a video game. The implications are staggering, especially when we are considering our suffering. If our lives are simulated, then does our suffering hold the same weight? And what will this mean for how we will understand our pain, our ethics, and our existence? Our simulation theory has gained its prominence through our thinkers like Nick Bostrom, who has argued that if our advanced civilizations will develop the ability for them to simulate our realities that are indistinguishable from their own, and if they will choose to create many of our such simulations, this can become to be statistically likely that we are living in one. While this idea might sound like a science fiction, this will rest on our logical possibilities, the future development of our computing power, the motivations of our simulated beings, and the indistinguishability of our simulated experiences from our real ones. If we are indeed living in a simulation, then the nature of our suffering can become to be deeply complicated. In a physical reality, our pain and our suffering are tied to our biological processes, a damage to our body, an illness, or an emotional distress. These experiences will carry a weight because they are directly connected to our survival and our well-being. But if our reality is simulated, then our suffering could be seen as something that is programmed into our experience. This can raise the unsettling question. Is our suffering necessary in a simulated world? Or is this intentionally designed into the system? One of our possibilities is that our suffering will exist because this will add a depth and a realism to the simulation. If the beings who are creating the simulation have intended for them to replicate a reality that is as close to their own as it is possible, then our suffering might be an inescapable part of that design. After all, our struggle, our loss, and our hardship are integral to our human experience, by them shaping our choices, our relationships, and our sense of a meaning. Without our suffering, our life might lack the contrast that can make our joy and our fulfillment to be meaningful. In this sense, our suffering could be viewed as a deliberate feature of the simulation, not as a flaw. Another perspective is that our suffering could serve an entirely different purpose, one that is unknown to us. If we are a part of an experiment or a study that is conducted by the beings who have created the simulation, then our suffering might be a variable that they are observing. This could help them to understand how our simulated beings will respond to an adversity, or how our systems of a morality and of a resilience will develop under our challenging conditions. In this scenario, our pain might have a meaning, but this is not one that we can comprehend within the limits of the simulation. This can lead to our profound ethical questions about the beings or the entities that are running the simulation. If they have the power for them to eliminate our suffering, then are they morally obligated for them to do so? In our human terms, to create a world that is filled with a pain might seem to be cruel. Yet, this is also possible that the creators will see the simulation differently, as something that is akin to an art, a learning tool, or a system that will transcend our human notions of a morality. Their perspective might render the concept of a cruelty to be meaningless. The possibility of a simulated suffering can also force us to reevaluate our sense of an agency. In a simulated world, are our actions and our choices truly our own, or are they predetermined by the system? If our suffering is pre-programmed, then do we have any responsibility for how we will experience this, or for how we will alleviate the suffering of others? These questions can challenge the foundations of our ethics and of our free will, by them leaving us to grapple with whether our simulated beings can hold a moral accountability. For those who will find our simulation theory to be plausible, the implications for how we will approach our suffering in our daily life are complex. On the one hand, to view our suffering as a part of a simulation might diminish its emotional impact. If our pain is merely a construct, then perhaps this will not need to be taken so seriously. On the other hand, the realization that our suffering is programmed into the system could deepen its poignancy, as this will become a reminder of our lack of a control over the fundamental nature of our reality. Yet even within the framework of our simulation theory, our suffering can retain a profound sense of an immediacy. Whether this is real or this is simulated, our pain will feel to be real to the one who is experiencing this. A broken bone, the loss of a loved one, or the sting of a rejection will affect us deeply, regardless of whether this will arise from our biological processes or from our lines of a code. This can highlight a paradox of our simulation theory. Even if our reality is an illusion, our experiences are not diminished. They will remain to be powerful, to be vivid, and to be deeply meaningful to us. Our simulation theory can also raise the possibility that we are not our passive participants, but we are our active creators within the simulation. If we are our simulated beings that are capable of us understanding the nature of our reality, then could we also influence or reshape this? This idea can open up a hopeful dimension by it suggesting that even in a simulated world, we might have the power for us to confront and for us to reduce our suffering through our actions, our empathy, and our ingenuity. Ultimately, our simulation theory can force us to confront our fundamental questions about our existence and our meaning. If our reality is simulated, then does that make this to be less valuable or significant? Or does the very fact that we will experience our consciousness, our joy, and our suffering will imbue this with its own kind of a reality? These questions are not easy for us to answer, but they can remind us that the nature of our reality, whether this is simulated or not, will not diminish the importance of how we will live, of how we will treat others, and of how we will make a sense of our lives. In the end, the possibility that we will live in a simulation will not provide any clear answers about our suffering. This will, however, challenge us to rethink our assumptions about our reality, our agency, and our human experience. Whether our lives are the result of a random chance, of our biological processes, or of the design of an advanced civilization, our experiences will remain to be undeniably real to us. A simulation or not, the choices that we will make in the face of our suffering will define who we are, and they will shape the world that we will inhabit.